Hello, my Z followers, and welcome back to the question where you have the question and, you have the questions and I have the answers. And today we're going to go back to Who Was Marcus de Lafayette Part 2, the continuation of the story. And usually I have a long intro, but I'm not going to do that this time because we're just going to get right to it. Things to do today. And yes, I did take a shower, so that's why my hair is all weird. So anyway, where we left off, we got a country as America had abandoned him, France had abandoned him, Okay, so anyway, France abandoned him, but his wife did like some mad seducing powers on Napoleon, right? And Napoleon, so he's like, okay, Lafayette, you can be a citizen as long as you don't like participate in politics. And Lafayette was like, fine with me, I hate you, I don't want to be a part of this. So he stays out of it, but then, ironically, Napoleon, years upon years after, continually asks him to be part of his Chamber of Deputies, which is, if you didn't know, is like the French Congress part stuff, like, basically he wants him to be part of the Congress, and Lafayette's like, no, I hate you, also you said I couldn't be part of politics, so what the fuck, man? And so anyway, on and on for basically most of Napoleon's reign. He's like, hey, you want to be part of the Chamber of Deputies? He's like, no, not staying in politics, no, I'm staying here. And then, of course, after the whole failure that was invading Russia in the wintertime, which I don't know why anybody thought that would work, but, they did, and Napoleon was exiled to Elba, which is an island near the European coast, so it wasn't really that much of an exile, but anyway. And, of course, Lafayette then decided to try and take more of like an interest in politics. He actually stayed out of it, but he was sort of like helping to quell some of like the revolutions and not revolutions, but like the sort of uprisings, etc. Because people didn't believe that Napoleon had been exiled far enough. Anyway, so they had a new king come back, and once again, he was like, "Hey, you want to be part of the Chamber of Deputies?" And Lafayette was like, no, I don't want to be part of your Chamber of Deputies, as once again, I hate how you got into power, you need to be more democratic. And then, like 100 days later, we have Napoleon again, comes back, and Lafayette pretty sure is just rolling his eyes by now. He's like, seriously? Once again, stays out of it till the defeat of Waterloo, where Lafayette comes out of like his political retirement to say, hey, I'm abdicating for this man to leave this country forever. Don't let him come back. And which of course led to Napoleon's abdication. But of course, Lafayette was like, hey, why don't we just send him to America? Get him set straight. And they're like, no, we're just going to send him to St. Helena, where he later died. But anyway, so after that, the new guy who was, once again, who was in power before Napoleon took over again, comes back into power. And this time, Lafayette's like, okay, I might join your Chamber of Deputies because y'all need some serious help. And while that's happening, actually the only reason he did that was because after the Napoleon thing, Prussia took over the part of France where Lafayette was living, and so Lafayette basically just joined Chamber of Deputies so he would get out of his home because Prussia invaded. But after Prussia went away, realizing that France isn't going to try and take over the whole world again, he went back home into retirement, which later his wife died, so sadness. Because I'm pretty sure he wouldn't actually be in the influential position he'll later be in if it wasn't for her, And so anyway, after that, how like in the 1940s, not 1940s, but like there's a bunch of revolutions throughout Europe, trying to like, because the whole like French idea of patriotism and everything had spread to most of Europe, and there were a bunch of revolutions everywhere, and of course who decided to take part in that? Lafayette decided to go and try and help the revolutions in most countries, especially and most notably the Greek Revolution, as he tried to get George Washington to help with the Greek Revolution. And you're probably thinking, George Washington was dead by then, right? And I'm just going to say, yes, he was dead, but George Washington, I made Lafayette's son, George Washington, remember the one who escaped to America in the last episode. And of course, so they became two like major parts in the Greek Revolution, and the king, I think it was like Louis the Eighth at that time of France, was super pissed about it, you know, because if this guy is like such a big like political movement, you know, if he's such like a big like figure of the revolution, if they both are, that means they could pose a threat to him and his throne. So he wanted to arrest them, and of course he couldn't arrest them because of the political ramifications. The thing about it, arresting not only someone from your own country, but also someone from a different country, both trying to help another country. So that could start a whole long thing. He didn't want to go through with that. So then later, President James Monroe, don't ask me which president that was, I just know he's a president, invited Lafayette to come back to America to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the country. And so, of course, Lafayette happily obliges. And just to give you some context, this is once again 50 years after Hamilton. And Lafayette is the last living soldier from the cast of Hamilton. You know, because Lawrence is dead, Hamilton's dead, pretty sure Hercules Mulligan is dead. So he's the last one, you know, and so he gets there, and originally he was just going to visit like 13 of the states, you know, the 13 colonies that he had helped free. But then he decided to stay for 24 months and, for 13 months and visit all 24 colonies. Well, states at the time, but, you know, colonies. It's, 6 of one, half dozen of another at the time. Including going and staying with Thomas Jefferson in Monticello, where they got a surprise visit from James Madison and John Adams. And, of course, you have John Quincy Adams, other president, and Andrew Jackson, other president. And basically all that. If you think about it, it's interesting that all the presidents, like, knew each other at that time, and now we just have, like, random people who don't know each other, but these are all people who, like, knew each other, and I think this sort of, like, lost that sort of, like, idealistic touch, you know? Because now anybody can run for president, but then it was just, like, they knew enough, you know, that everybody knew each other enough. I think it's probably because there was only 13 colonies, and now it's, like, 50 states. Anyway, getting off track. So anyway, he comes back later to find a new king in place. And there's a lot of riots because nobody likes a new king. It's like Charles X, I think. And nobody likes him because he basically took away their freedom of speech. And, okay, so he's electing, but he's like a fairly new king, you know? And so he's electing the Chamber of Deputies, and guess who is voted into the Chamber of Deputies? Lafayette. And Lafayette, of course, who hates the monarchy, it's not something you want in your Chamber of Deputies if you're a monarchy who wants to keep your power. So, what does Charles X do? He dissolves the Chamber of Deputies and decides to re-elect a new one. But with the re-election, guess who gets voted back into the Chamber of Deputies? Lafayette, who then, of course, starts advocating for Charles' removal, starts talking about having to have a democratic sort of like ideals, and eventually a bunch of riots start in the street about this. And it's insane. So, eventually, Lafayette is able to get Charles X to abdicate, or basically, like, give up his power. And they elect somebody else. I think it was, like, Louis Philippe from the Duke of Orleans or whatever. And he'd been living in America for a while, so of course Lafayette's like, okay, he's going to be a complete, like, democratic, you know, freedom for all, liberal, all that kind of stuff. And everything was fine until, like, 5 months afterwards, where we learned that he was not everything we thought he was going to be. And he took away their freedom of speech, too, and all of the rioting in the street. Everybody with barricades and everything, like, it was insane. So what does Lafayette do? He goes to the middle of it. Because why not? So he goes to the middle of it, and everybody just proclaims him as the leader of the revolution. And, of course, Louis Philippe is like, okay, let's not make this like 1789, which, if you remind you, is basically the original French Revolution, which Lafayette was also a major leader in. And so he decides to make him a National Guard, because maybe if he's on our side, he won't go and try to overthrow us. But no, it doesn't work. And he helps with a bunch of the revolutions. I don't actually know if they ever succeeded in overthrowing Louis Philip, or whatever his name was, as they don't mention that, in a lot of history books, or whatever. And so, basically, they voted him out of the National Guard once they realized that he wasn't going to change his views. But they couldn't take him out of the Chamber of Deputies, as that was one right they couldn't take away. And so he would go and make democratic speeches denouncing all of the past kings, denouncing the current king and everything, trying to get more into the American ideals, which he could have been tried for treason against the country. But once again, he wasn't an actual, French citizen, with the new king, so they couldn't really do that. Also because the ramifications and everything, it wouldn't be safe for them to do that. He was too big of a political figure for France, for him to do it safely and not be threatened for overthrowing even more. And lost my train of thought. Anyway, that was the last major thing that Lafayette did before he died at the age of 76 of pneumonia. But he had his son bring a piece of soil from from Bunker Hill, and lay it over his grave so he could be buried in American soil, because he considered himself more of an American than he was a Frenchman. And I think that I don't know why I decided to tell you that, but I know last week I was really into the story of Lafayette, because I feel like he didn't get as much credit as he deserved, because he was the hero of the American Revolution, and this whole big deal about how he was going to go to France and bring freedom to his people. And I feel like even though he didn't really succeed in doing that, he was a major political figure and a major benefactor of all these revolutions, as he did always fight for freedom, and he did lead them in some of their darkest hours to that eventual freedom, which they have now, I think. And I thought it was also kind of sad that Hamilton in Yorktown, if you didn't know, said that he would be on his side when they fought for freedom for France, and Hamilton was the person who said that they shouldn't help France. I thought that was kind of ironic, kind of sad, that basically in that his direst hour, both of his countries abandoned him. And I don't know what you can do with this information. You can go on Jeopardy, trivia. I know this is very kind of vague information, but that's what I do. So I hope this was useful in some way. I love y'all. If y'all have any other questions about anything, just comment below and you could be featured on my next video. I love you guys. So long, and thanks for all the fish.